Welcome to the Swansea Comic and Gaming Convention live stream. Today it's Monday, so we've got a guest on with us, and today we've got Nick Brokenshire.
Hello, greetings.
So, do you want to tell the audience a bit about yourself, Nick?
Yeah, so I'm from Aberdeen in Scotland, and I live just outside Manchester with my wife and my newborn, and I make comics mainly for IDW. I do regular work on the Star Wars Adventures line, both the original volume and the new volume, and I've done other bits and bobs, like I've done little snippets for 2000 AD and Titan and little bits here and there. And I did a story for Heavy Metal last year, which was fun. And what else can I tell you? A couple of secret irons in the fire, which you'll know more about by the end of the year. But mainly Star Wars Adventures at the moment. Yeah. And I play in Blues Harvest. There you go.
Yeah, we're going to ask you about that as well, because
Okay.
that's pretty cool. We were hoping you might have a guitar or something, but, we're not going to tax you to...
There are guitars, if you need one.
We're going to ask you, how did you discover comics as well? How what was the spark?
Well, I come from like a mixed cultural background. My mum's side of the family are from South America, and I spent my first 6 years in Venezuela. So like I had over there they had all the like American stuff, all the stuff that was imported into the States. So things like and things like Speed Racer and Ultraman and all that sort of thing. That's the stuff that I used to remember watching a lot of when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But like the anime stuff and like Kimba the White Lion. I don't know if you know about that, but like
because it's basically the Lion King.
It's the Lion King, yeah. But it's an anime and Astro Boy and all that sort of stuff, as well as all the Hanna-Barbera stuff. So that was the light's gone off. Hang on, there we go. So like I remember Batman and Superman and all those kind of things on the TV, but comics wise, I didn't really encounter them properly until I was like 7 and back here living in Scotland, and that was like your classic, Beano and all that sort of thing. But then like when it comes to like the more genre, the more sort of comic booky genre stuff, like 2000 AD was the big one. I think called Starburst. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
And then little dribs and drabs of Marvel comics and DC comics. But where I lived, because I lived in the sticks, like really in the sticks, we had a little convenience store in the middle of nowhere, and they would just get one comic every 4 months. So I'd have like these odd little comics that I would look at for years, you know what I mean? But like never any kind of continuity. But then, like when the direct market started to kick off, and in the mid to late 80s in Aberdeen, we got a comic shop, and it's still there, called Plan 9, and boom, that was it. Once I discovered that, I was about 16, and then that was it. I just got into everything then. So yeah, so mainly cartoons, and then 2000 AD, and then direct market stuff.
That's quite interesting. That's quite unique as well. Sorry, I'm sure I'm getting questions come through on my phone. That's not something that's not normal. That's pretty cool. We talk about that.
And that stuff definitely, like, I definitely got a certain like spin on the way that I sort of look at comics because of stuff like Speed Racer and Ultraman and stuff. So I was like really aware of anime stuff at a time when no one in this country was aware of it, and so by the time I was back in the UK, and then growing up when Battle of the Planets came on the telly over here, I was saying to all my friends, "Oh, guys, watch this because
it's this whole thing."
Yeah, it's just like anime is really good. You need to watch it, and of course it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Did you get the version out in Venezuela without the R2D2 rip-off?
No, well, no, because that came. No. That was the American version. No, I got the normal Battle of the Planets.
All right.
But, the Gacha Man. Yeah, the old. Yeah, they've got they cannibalized the original episodes, didn't they? To make like they did with Power Rangers, but there's
and on Robotech as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think it's really clever how they did that. You know what I mean? Reinvented the program.
As a kid, you don't even catch that stuff. With the Super Sentai stuff, you just don't notice that it's different people in the costumes.
Yeah, yeah. Even the things like Super Sentai stuff. There was stuff like that bleeding through over in Venezuela because I lived in an American community, so it was all American TV. And Ultraman, I was mega on Ultraman. I'm still obsessed with it. And all that kind of stuff. So when I came back and it was all my little friends, I was like, "Have you all seen Ultraman?" And everybody's like, "No, we've seen Camberwick Green though. It's really good." You know what I mean? But yeah. So that's where my head comes from.
Have you seen Whistle Garbage?
Yeah.
My daughter and her brothers like a lot of the Japanese imported stuff, and they like it cherry. They like vanilla. When she was really small, before she could read, she'd bring these DVDs over that were imported from Japan.
Okay.
And she wouldn't understand the Japanese. She wouldn't understand the dialogue, and she wouldn't understand the subtitles. I'm like, "Do you want me to read this to you?" And she'd just be sitting there going, "No." Just enjoying what was going on the screen.
So she didn't watch Urotsuki Doji Legend of the Overfiend?
No. Fortunately not.
Yeah, well, that's good storytelling if you don't need the words, So there you go.
How did that getting into comics as genre, branch into working in comics and genre?
Well, I actually, this is weird to say, but I didn't twig that I was allowed to make comics. That as a kid, I was like, someone somewhere makes these things, and I absorb them. But it just didn't occur to me that I could do it as well. And ironically, things like Starburst, that was made by DC Thompson, which was literally half an hour's drive from my house. You know what I mean? Because I lived in the sticks, and DC Thompson in Dundee. You know what I mean? It's not far. And loads of artists like Ian Kennedy, Cam Kennedy, all nearby, but so I kind of came out of high school having no thought of becoming an artist. I did loads of drawing and stuff, and I kind of went through life a little bit like that, not realizing that you could do the things you liked. So I just did grafty, horrible jobs for most of my life, and then around when I was about 26, I sort of twigged that, oh, hang on, maybe if I went to college and I could learn about these things. So I did a foundation course in art, and then ended up at university in my late 20s, this old, grizzled, older student, in amongst all these 18-year-olds, and did illustration, and then came out of that, and I kind of had an idea that I wanted to do comics. And by this point, I'm 30, but I had no idea how to go about it. So I trained as a teacher and became a high school teacher, and taught art. But while I was doing that, and I was also playing in bands, so I was very torn between art and music, and so I dedicate a lot of time to playing in bands and stuff. And then time went by, and then by basically my mid-30s, I was like, yeah, but I want to make comics, So I didn't really get into the game until my mid-30s, and that was basically through putting the word out on the net. And I started like my own like web comic, which I sort of put out one page a month. That's how regular I was. I put loads of work into one page and I put them out, and then I put links to it in a website called there was one called Pencil Jack, and then there was another one called I can't remember the name of it, but it was at the time. Yeah, it was the name. It was what people did at the time, and then I got like a couple of messages, and one of them was from Adam Nave and DJ Kirkbride, and we started the Amelia Cole story then, and which is basically my first real long sort of long-term comics thing. I'd only ever done one-page things, or my 15 pages that I did over 15 months. But so I hadn't done anything of any real length, and I certainly hadn't done anything on a schedule. You know what I mean? So when I started working with them, it was really, the idea was that we would just be doing our own little indie comic, And so the next thing I know is like within a couple of months of starting this book, and bear in mind, I'm a late starter. I hadn't learned a lot of the things that people learn how to make comics early on, because I had not done it, and basically a couple of months into this new wonderful project that we're doing with friends, they say, we're good friends with Chris Roberson and Alison Baker, and they were the people that started a thing called Monkey Brain Comics. And this was at the time when Comixology was just getting established. So this was about 2011. And Comixology was just taken off. And Monkey Brain was kind of one of the sort of like trailblazers in doing digital-only series. Like official digital-only series that would be coming out through Comixology. But it was touted as like, look at this thing that that we can now do, which is so common now. But at the time, it was like, wow, Monkey Brain Comics are making digital-only comics, and so they said they've invited us to be part of the opening roster. So the next thing we know, we're part of like the first salvo of books from Monkey Brain coming through this new platform, Comixology. And like Chris Sabella got his start there. Loads of people, Paul Tobin and his missus, I can't remember their name. Bandette. Do you remember that story, Bandette? It was doing around. It got a lot of like Eisner type attention. So basically, we were part of that. But me, I was like, yeah, but I haven't even learned how to do this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know. I hadn't even found a style, all I was doing was just exploring making comics. So the next thing we know, we're part of this thing. And so then, like the summer of 2012 was the big release, and we were part of it. And so the Amelia Cole series started there. And really, that was a story that should have we just let's do a book about this. It stretched on for 5 years, and through Monkey Brain, and we got 5 trades. We got an omnibus out of it, so that's how I started in comics, basically.
That's crazy. That's such an interesting journey. And you're a late bloomer, as you say as well, which is kind of unheard of now. People do. I mean, all the people we've spoken to have all just dived in at the beginning. So.
Yeah, I was too stupid to do that.
We because like I was listening, and so I went back to university. Well, I had to go back to college first to do a qualification to get into university when I was 24.
Right.
So I was in university when I was 20. I graduated when I was 30, but I was working full time through it as well. I had an evening shift as well. So like I really felt old because all the fresher, they'd all be out on the night outs and everything, and I would be
You're like, oh, my knees.
Mate, I jibbed all responsibilities during my time at university. I just went, yeah, okay, I'm in. Freshers week for 4 years, and yeah. But yeah, so you can relate. It's weird. It's weird being in a classroom with 18-year-olds, and you're like, oh boy, But it was good,
Yeah, and I made some friends around their age.
Yeah.
You get chucked in a project with
Are
someone.
the obligatory cattails coming in every single time?
Oh.
Yeah, and you get chucked in a project with someone, and you just click. But at the same time, that was when we were starting to try and work out how to do comics. Same with you.
Yeah.
We didn't know that you could make them. It was
Right.
something that people in America made, or people up in Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that the creators, Stardust creators, were Stardust? I say Stardust. And Starburst creators were like so close. Had you already moved away by that point? Did it click afterwards?
I didn't realize till years later that Ian, like my big hero was Ian and Cam Kennedy, both of them, and especially Ian Kennedy, because I grew up at the time when the new Eagle was coming out, and he was like one of the main artists for Dan Dare at the time. It was just beautiful, colourful stuff that he did, and he was literally just down the road, and no idea whatsoever.
Hyper detailed and everything.
Yeah, oh yeah. But when I honestly, I'll tell you, like, I went through a weird trajectory as well, because through the like late 80s, I'm dashing around all over the place here, but like in the late 80s when the direct market was happening, like, yeah, I got into all all the classics. I was there, for Watchmen coming out, and for Dark Knight, and for Year One and all that. Great, loved that. But then very rapidly sort of got into things like Love and Rocket. So by the time, 89, like I was catching up on Love and Rockets, and on early 90s was when Hate came out, and like 8 Ball got every single issue of that. You know what I mean? Dan Clowes. So my head went away from like the established stuff very quickly. So then by the early 90s, I had no desire to work for DC or Marvel. You know what I mean? Because all I wanted to do was basically read and maybe make indie comics. You know what I mean? And then by the time I was at uni, like Chris Ware was coming out, and more Dan Clowes, and I was just like, yeah, this is what I like. But then I also like messages from IGW.
Oh, are they saying be quiet?
Shall I read you this message?
Yes.
Here we go. Hi. Oh, I better not. It's okay. It was a message from Lucasfilm. So why did we bring that up? Yeah. So my point being about like not knowing about how to make comics and stuff, I was so all over the place with things that I just had no idea that I could do it. So did you do, Ricky, illustration or like graphics?
No, I went back.
He's a proper nerd.
American studies. We write. I don't draw at all. So like me and Adam write together, and but yeah. So like.
You did tell me this before, actually. I think, yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we done that. I done that anyway, and it was that thing as well. Like you said, when we found out that people made comics, like Pete from
Pete Taylor.
Pete Taylor, him and Sock set up the Swansea Comics Collective in 2008.
Yeah.
Right.
So they set that up in 2008, and we managed to see the poster and ended up joining. And at first, when it found out, oh, people make comics, you obviously want to make like Spider-Man and everything. And then very soon it was like, you know what? I don't want to tell other people's stories. Not that I'm saying if Marvel want to come and give me a Spider-Man book, yeah. But
they'd probably just give you a cease and desist instead.
Yeah. But yeah, I just want to tell my stories instead. It's one of those weird things.
I was quite aware. I mean, I was a Bat fan from like the early ages. So, but just like you as well, I lived in a small little village, and so I'd get whatever. We had a local news agent. I'd get whatever caught my fancy, X-Men and things like that. My first experience with 2000 AD was actually at some. There's a beautiful stretch of beach, Pembrey, and all of that down kind of West Wales, and we were in my family and I, my mum and my sisters and my little brother were in a little camping holiday, and there was one newsagent that sold comic books, and they had 2000 AD, and it was the last, at the time, it was the last, it was, I can't remember what story it was. It was a land shark story with Dredd in it.
Okay.
And it was the last, oh, damn it, I can't remember. It was the last story about some other character, I can't remember which one it was, and it just was like, this isn't Batman, you know. It's got blood and gore and other stuff in it. It was like, okay,
yeah,
but it made me realize, you know, that's probably what I wanted to do. Maybe not the blood and gore, but I didn't have to write Batman necessarily.
Yeah.
But again, I would.
Yeah.
Me too.
It was like I grew up like with, like you said, reading the Beano and Dandy and all of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
So like and then seeing all of these, like I didn't really see all of this indie stuff until I was an adult and got back into comics. So like, yeah, it's a real eye-opening experience when you get it. And when we first started going out doing cons, seeing how much indie stuff there is in Britain as well, it's nuts.
Yeah.
It kind of make you proud as well, because we've always had. Well, it shows we've always had a comic industry, and it's thriving at the moment as well, with things like Comixology.
Yeah, for sure. It's a real distinct scene that we have, don't we? And like, and even with like a nice kind of variety, even within the island, like, you know, like what you would see at Bristol, you know, compared to what you see in Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just little shades different, you know, but like, yeah, it's fantastic. It's really good to be a comic artist in the UK, as long as you can get some work.
Yes,
you know.
I was just going to say about that. Before I go on, thank you, Jamie. I'm not going to say why. You always text a friend of mine, instead of joining the chat, sends me messages through my phone, and they're usually very crude. So yes, thank you, Jamie. I was going to say, I always talk about like the music industry in the UK. You don't really get an indie scene with music in the UK. Before, somebody's indie for 10 minutes, and then suddenly they're on an indie label, but it's actually just a big label. But it's just the opposite with comic books. In America, there's loads of indie zines and things like that, and it's the same in the UK. You get so many, as you said, and it's all kind of interconnected as well. You know, it's almost like a rock scene as well, where people are just sharing ideas and selling each other's books and things like that, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to the way it was, like even in the late 80s with Marvel and 2000 AD, and all like the artists beginning to cross pollinate, and you know, like, yeah, it's always, and not like all the artists, you know, that were coming into 2000 AD, like, were, I suppose you would call them indie artists now. You know what I mean? Like they weren't called anything in those days. They were just some kid, you know, that
with blood.
Yeah.
Fresh meat.
Listen, let me switch my light on, because the only light in my room now is my computer. So hang on.
That's cool.
Okay, so whilst Nick's doing that, I'm gonna try and sort out my audio, because apparently I'm very quiet.
You're quite quiet.
Could probably
I was just going to say about Sam's commented in our chat as well about Legend of the Overfiend very early on. Yes, that is a classic entry. That's one of those ones that a friend loaned me a copy of on VHS, and I had no idea what it was about, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's good." I'm actually this dude I'm collecting from our local comic shop, Akira in trade form. So
nice.
I do like a bit of Akira.
That series is, I mean, obviously it's amazing, but like it really, really is.
Oh, Tomo's work is just the detail in like double splash page. I mean, double splash pages, as you know, on a normal American format comic or a normal format comic is going to be hell. but Tomo's level of detail, and also what he puts, like you get those like Sikorsky style helicopters just flying above. He's got all the perspective right, and then you got those tiny little buildings, and there's no scrimping on the detail as well. And and he was doing that weekly sometimes.
Oh, those guys are insane. I mean, I know they've got assistants and everything, but like,
yes, yeah,
have
you couldn't do it otherwise.
No, although I believe he did do a lot himself. You know what I mean? Like perhaps more than they do now. But there's no way you could do that much work without help.
No, I think I got a manga, Maggie or Magi or whatever there. It's great flicking through the back and seeing how those things are made because you don't get to see them in normal comics unless you pick up a trade. But like I like to see them in traded the collections and seeing little sketches and showing how they work. It's not.
Yeah, there's a show like for your listeners, friends, viewers, whatever you call them. They're called Man Ben, and it was a series that they made in Japan by the guy that did 20th Century Boys and what's it called? I forgot the name of it, but that he basically went around all these different manga artists and set up cameras in their office, and this show Man Ben is just them watching how different manga, they're called mangaka, how they do their thing, you know what I mean? And it's just amazing. But and for some of them, it's super production line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like brrr, pass it on, brrr, pass it on, brrr. You know, it's weird, but I'm really inspired by stuff like that. I love all the Masamune Shirow stuff. I was
going to say about Ishiro, Sam suggested Inyo Asano as well. It's a name I don't recognize, but no, all the Ghost in the Shell stuff is outrageous.
Yeah, I've got a friend. I got a friend in Shanghai who I met last year in California. Oh no, it was the year before. And
time lapse.
We just lost a year, haven't we?
Yeah.
And he sent me this. Look at this. And I don't actually know how to pronounce the name, but this artwork is next level. Hang on. I'll have to send you a link.
Yeah.
It's bananas. What am I doing? I'll send you a link.
One manga artist my daughter really likes is, and I actually dig him as well, is Junji Ito.
Oh god,
it's bizarre because the guy is such a nice guy. He's strange, he's got his peculiarities, but he's such a nice guy. Yet his stuff is, I know Sam will probably appreciate it as well. His stuff is, dark.
It sends you to a dark place.
Yeah, but drawn by a apparently very nice and stable gentleman as well. So, but Ito's stuff's cool.
It's that whole culture, isn't it? Like they have like big stalls where like all these like respectable like men in ties like stand there looking at this gory stuff like on their way to work, and then put it back, and then off they pop, and then live these super like regimented lives,
Yeah, and Japan's got that weird thing that we do. I don't think America has much. I think we have it because in our indie scene, where you will have a manga about a guy playing golf, or a guy who's interested in fishing. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. That's what we should have. I mean, killing a lot of trees, probably doing it if we had that many books out. But it's just crazy that they don't have that in the big. In America, they have. It's all. Not that I'm knocking the superhero scene, but
I think that comes down to the
Ito's a love of cats.
Frederick Wortham thing, in that comics were seen to be bad and corrupting youth and all of that, whereas Japan and to us to some extent don't have that aspect of the stigma against comics. So if you grew up reading them in Japan, you're probably going to carry on reading them, whereas
you're right there, because like when that Wortham stuff happened, it just like changed the course of comics altogether, didn't it?
Yeah.
So like where all the things could have developed in lots of different directions, suddenly all the brakes are put on, and they just have to, okay, well, let's just do romance comics, and let's do
Westerns.
All these, and all like sanitized horror and stuff. So,
Whereas,
like,
the Frankenstein comics in the I forget his name with the characters Frankenstein. I forget who drew the comic book, but it was going from gory horror, and then suddenly it was slapstick until the comics code changed again, and then it was horror again.
Right. Yeah.
And like
Crazy.
Morbius was a living vampire because undead was against the comics code.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But if you've read Cavalier and Clay,
yeah, I haven't, but I know of it. Yeah.
and they kind of go, because it's a fictional history. They kind of touch on the whole that newspaper cartoons were highbrow and were acceptable, but they didn't stick with their comic book artist colleagues. It was like, no, we're up here, they down there, kind of thing.
Walt Kelly was guilty of doing that. He did Pogo, and his comics were all about the McCarthy era, and he was summoned to court, and he drew the distinction that comic strips in newspapers were illustrated humorous pieces about politics, while comic books were,
lowbrow,
all of those things.
Yeah.
We showed them.
Well, like, is it Hal Foster that did Prince Valiant? He was pulling in. Was it Hal Foster? One of those guys, one of the Golden Age guys, and like he was pulling in. He was brought into the New York Times or wherever it was to do his syndicated thing. Whichever paper it was, it might have been the LA Times, and he was pulling millions. Like they gave him like a full whack, mega salary, because it was such a respected art form, and it came from, like the pre-war and post-war era. That stuff was like, you got to read that stuff because it's good, Meanwhile, the comic book stuff is the pulpy comic book stuff is languishing in disrepute, and weird how the two managed to coexist. But anyway, so there you go.
That was a fun tangent.
I think the whole thing, the reason why Japan embraced the comic books was because after the post-war and the boom, they would be introduced to things like the superhero comics, and they didn't have that stigma that it was bad. They were just trying to absorb Americana. And, they were seeing the Superman newsreels and things like that. So they did right. America's a bit hypocritical.
So,
we all know that.
What would your advice be for anyone who's trying to break into comic books or make comic books?
You've got to make your own comic books. That's the only way. It's the only way. There's two ways. You got to make your own comic books, or be the absolute best artist or writer that you know. If you know that you are as good as Stuart Immonen, then just knock on their door and say, there you go. You know what I mean? This is what I do. And they'll give you a job. Absolutely. No two ways about it. But there aren't many who are that good to start with. So the only way to do it is just make your comics. Just make comics. And the process of doing it, one will strengthen your resolve, or it will break you. You know what I mean? So like, either you'll go, I'm rubbish at this and I can't be bothered trying to be better, or you'll go, I'm rubbish at this and I'm going to be better. And that kind of mentality will push you forward. And if you can manage to keep doing that, you'll find work. You know what I mean? You'll find a way. It's the same with anything. If you decide that you want to be really good at cooking or really good at football, then you'll just keep doing it, regardless of what anyone says to you. And then by the process of doing it, if you're playing for, your local team or your pub, someone will notice you if you're really good. You know what I mean? But you just got to keep at it, The only way. So make comics, Figure out the kind of comics you want to make and give it a go and keep going.
There's two cool stories I heard. I can't remember who the first one was about, but it was from this artist. Apparently, they'd come into New York. Hello there, Mark. they come to New York with a portfolio, and I can't remember. I don't think they had any. I can't remember what this was. It's something like Jim Lee is around, like somebody who's legendary now. They basically, I think they turned up to Marvel saying, "Can I see Jim? Sorry, Jim." Stan Lee or somebody like that. Can I see the editor? I've got my portfolio, and they went, "Oh, we don't do that. Sorry." And they went, "Oh, I'm on my way to DC, but you were on my way. I just thought I'd pop in. They're going to give me a job." And apparently they went, "Stay here," and they basically hired them on the spot. And the other one was Archie Goodwin was saying about he turned up for an interview, and Stan Lee had they get Iron Man, just pencils and inks all over his desk, and he's trying to work out the story. And you could see Stan Lee was really stressing about do the Stan Lee method of trying to put the work in.
Yeah.
And he said, "You can have this," and that's how he apparently ended up on Iron Man. And Archie Goodwin said if he'd had Millie the model on his desk, that's what he'd be known for.
Wow, goodness me, yeah. Yeah, there are obviously different, like subtleties to getting into it. Like, if you happen to be good, then get yourself to a con, show someone your portfolio. People will notice. And if you can't do that, but you still want to do it, just stick with it and put your passion into it and find a way of keeping going. Like that for most of us, that means having a day job, and doing it. And if you can manage to do that, then you deserve to stay in the industry. You know what I mean? There's no other way around it.
Yeah, you're not having weekends basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just had a question pop in now. I was just going to say, I think you probably agree. Now there are more first steps to get on the ladder than there have been with webcomics and self-publishing.
Of course, yeah.
As you said, you got to keep going if you want to go up.
Can I, guys, just bear with me?
No worries.
Thanks. I'm just giving my wife the baby monitor. Yeah, of course. Like the whole webcomic thing, that's a great step. In a way, that's what I wanted to do. Like with when we started the Amelia Cole series, because I was distinctly aware of the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. You know what I mean? And it was like, cool, we'll make this book and we'll put it online, and I'll do this for a few years, and then who knows? Next thing I know, like it's just snowballing, But yeah, I think that the online method is good, and in fact, it probably fits in, like as far as a model for making comics and making money. The online method is good, because like you put your work online, you get your followers, and then you start doing collections or selling T-shirts or whatever it is that you want to do. Get it online, just make your own industry. That's the way.
Yeah, and like I know I ask that question to everyone, but I remember being at Kapow, the con that Mark Miller put on, and I went to watch a panel with like Stephen Wacker and Lionel Yu, and they asked that question. Someone asked that question, and they went down, and basically by the time it got to Stephen Wacker, he turned around and goes, "But after listening to all of that, don't pay any attention, because whenever someone finds a way in, we close that door."
Yeah. Yeah. Got a couple of questions from Pinky Sai. Two-part question. Let me just read the second part. Okay, so this is the what would you, what wouldn't you? So what would you love, what IP would you love to draw for, and which one wouldn't you, no matter how good the pay would be?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm like you, I'm a big Batman fan. I'd love to draw Batman. I've always had like an idea for a real, not a quirky Batman, but like a take on Batman that I don't think I've ever seen before, and that's been floating around in my head. But really, the more I think about it, the more I realize it's more of a parody. So I don't know, but I'd always love to draw Batman.
Mm.
I mean, I love Silver Surfer. I would love.
I think your work would be fantastic on a Silver Surfer title.
Oh, thank you. I'd really like to give that a crack. Especially, I mean,
we'll post this on Marvel on the page at some point.
Please do.
Just that little snippet.
I don't know if did you see Silver Surfer Black? Did you see that series?
No, it wasn't even, I didn't put it on my poll. I had so many things, but I did see it. I'll pick it up on trade.
You absolutely must. It will melt your brain. Like, the story is fine, but the artwork will literally make your eyes melt out of your head. It's so good. So I've always wanted to do that. Something that I wouldn't want. Flipping heck, that's a really weird question. Something that I wouldn't want.
Our audience.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't want to do that. What's that one? It's not. The one where they're all like become bloodthirsty, where the whole world gets full of blood. Crossed, yeah. That's not.
Yeah, I just to happen to have it. The 3D one with crossed 3D glasses. There's very few comic books that make me nauseous, but when you see a human turn into a brazier in the jungle, or when you see possibly Prince Harry being torn apart and blowing up, that kind of make you stop.
There was this one time. This is where my head is, like, for your listeners. So, like, I briefly worked in a TV production studio, and one day, everyone had gone to lunch, and so I was just looking after the studio. I was just tidying up, basically, and it was quite dark. It was a post-production studio. All the lights were off. They had all these monitors on. So while I was tidying up, here's a video. Pop that in and watch it. And it was Hellraiser 2. And while I was working, I was watching Hellraiser 2, going, oh boy, And there's a bit in it where, like, the wife, the ex-wife or whatever, comes back and she's got no skin and stuff like that. And I was just watching it. I was like, oh dear me, and I just completely passed out because of the gore. It was just because this woman had no skin and was talking, and that was too much for me. I literally passed out, and then like my boss came in and just found me on the floor, and I was like, oh hi,
just checking under the tables.
Yeah, so I don't think I'd be very good at things like that. I just keep vomiting on my pages,
We've discovered Nick's no.
Yeah.
So if Clive Barker said £1 million, but you've got to draw Hellraiser.
Clive, I like you. I like Weave World. That was good. But like, no, I don't think I could. I think I'd just be, because what happens when you're drawing, especially when you're doing long form stuff, you start to really relate to the characters, and like, especially if they're characters that you've come up with. So like, and while you're drawing, you emote with what you're doing. And you're sort of in a like a perpetual state of like stasis of that specific emotion. So like if someone is going, oh my god, then you're sort of like, oh, while you're drawing it, you know what I mean? So like if someone's getting their balls ripped off or something, I'll be like, ah! I don't think I could do it. So there you go. So there you go. There's your answer.
There you go, Si. So then, the other one is a bit more. It's going to take us back down the philosophical route, I think. Is the established?
I'm sorry. I said balls.
No, it's fine.
Right? Is the established industry dying? This comes from Primitive One, Adam's friend Mark, meaning Marvel and DC. Friend.
Workmate.
Yeah. No, they're not dying. They're changing. That's all. Everything changes, the industry has been in a constant state of change, since 1963, since Fantastic Four. In fact, before then, don't forget, like when Fantastic Four came out, that whole thing was coming out in newsstands in the States. It was coming over here in dribs and drabs. And then, like, by the time there was a direct market. Like 10, 15 years later, suddenly we have comic shops, and then that all changed. And then in the mid 90s, that sort of shifted because then Diamond took over because of all the fall, because of the big what's it called,
the comic book crash,
when the crash happened. So then all that changed, and then in the 2000s it all changed again, and then in the early 10s it all changed again because of Comixology. It's just constant change. So there'll always be comics, and there'll always be Marvel and DC,
Yeah.
And there'll always be an IDW, and things may evolve, but there's always going to be something. Who's going to stop me making comics? Nobody, Like,
his point
that's
is,
the way I see
the
it.
point for this was that he thinks that crowdfunded is the future. But
that'd be an interesting thing with the big industry. If you purchased directly from them, you funded the comics you wanted.
Well, that's already happening. So, there are people that have announced their books through Image, and they're getting crowdfunded. You know what I mean? So it's
the evolution.
It is. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and on top of that, we've seen massive changes in this year with Diamond losing both Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
So,
well, Marvel are now going over to, is it Penguin Random House? You know what I mean? Because it's been sort of known for a long time that the main book market is really where the big things are being funneled into.
Yeah.
So maybe floppies and long-term monthly comics may have to evolve into something else. But we're going. Looks like we're sort of entering more of a book market thing, and then on top of that, we've now got the self-publishing and print-on-demand model because of Amazon and things like that. You know what I mean? So it's just changing. But there'll always be comics. If
there must always be comics.
There must, yeah. But listen, all of Hollywood is predicated on comics. You know what I mean? Nearly every film is based on a comic, and I don't mean comic book movies. There's loads of movies that come out every year that are based on indie books and loads and loads and loads of things. There's a shop in LA. There's a couple of shops in LA, like Golden Apple and stuff like that, where they have entire walls where industry people just come in and start pulling things off that wall to take uptown to Hollywood and to their production companies to see what they can see, And in one way it's good because it means that it's perpetuating one side of comics. On the other side, it's bad because it's making some comics creators come into the business because they want to make a movie, and that's not that's not quite the right angle. But there's room for everything, I think.
I have certain grumble with a certain very famous comic book writer, because of the way their writing model is directly aimed at movie script writing. Their work is good, but very polar sometimes, and I won't read their stuff.
But he's got his place, you know what I mean? He's made his money and he knows what he wants, and the thing is that the stuff that he writes is so good for that kind of thing that you just think, okay, but
that's the frustrating thing.
I know, but I know what you mean. It is frustrating, and the problem is that you can't help but think that way sometimes because I've had loads of meetings, where you're coming up with ideas and we could do this, and then we could sell it on and blah blah blah. It's why did we just talk about that? You know what I mean? Why is that a thing? But it just is, So whatever, and Marvel and DC are intrinsically part of that, so they ain't going anywhere. I don't think so, anyway.
No.
I was watching Last Days of American Crime on Netflix. It wasn't very good. It was too long. I didn't realize until the film came on. I just that looks kind of heavy-handed. It wasn't good. But it was Remender and Ticini, who I really dig because their work on Low and Remender's work everywhere else. Yeah. And I was like, it makes me not want to read the comic book now because the film wasn't very good. But I'm sure the comic's fantastic. Yeah. I'm sure the comics are fantastic.
Oh yeah.
It's like he's also said about like RIP just there to feed films, and I don't think it is to anymore, because the problem they've got now, they don't take everything verbatim from a book. They'll take ideas from a book. So like it's
I think there's a consciousness there, and that's not a bad thing. But I think writers are more aware of what could be um, considered the next big thing for a movie.
Yeah. I think the way it works with kind of every artistic or like creative movement is that there's always like a point at which there's this real fertile period of creativity, which then leads to wonderful works being made, and then that in turn leads down the line to the mainstream clicking onto it, and then that leads to saturation, and then a complete sea change, and then something else kind of emerges. And so, like, you could probably describe the last 30 years as the era of the comic book, because, like, since the heyday of the mid 80s and all the incredible works that came out there, the media world, and particularly movies, has been reeling and responding to that 5-year period has affected the subsequent 30 years, and it coming to a head with the Marvel movies, you know what I mean, like, of the last 10 years. It's like it all kind of led to that, and ironically, it was like things like Watchmen and Dark Knight that really triggered that stuff, and they haven't quite managed to get it right, but maybe they will. Who knows?
I think comic books in some ways, in terms of entertainment, are always going to be ahead of the time because of what you can do in pen and ink. But it's just crazy how only now with technology, or with CG especially, you can make a superhero movie valid without looking shoddy.
Stupid, yeah. Hey, I must correct myself. That Watchmen series, whew, did you see that?
No, I totally missed that. It's something I want to check out, though.
Holy smokes! It nails it. I'm not even kidding. Like, you know how when you watch the Snyder Watchmen, you go, well, it looks right. You know what I mean? But there's something empty about it, like all his films. But like, when you see the Watchmen series, it will knock you down. It will pick you up and then bash you in the face with it. It's a shame that Alan Moore couldn't see it, you know what I mean, or wouldn't see it, because it was like, this guy got it right, watch it. It's spectacular.
I've viewed interviews with him, and like when they asked him to do it and he said no, and then he went back and went, well, someone's going to do it, so I'm going to do my version of it, and like and then like people who were skeptical have said, oh, it's outstanding.
Oh, yeah. So it really is. And it's wonderful because it doesn't. It's not like an alternate timeline. It's not doing something weird with the story. It literally picks up 30 years after the book. You know what I mean? After the comic book, and it's so like it's. Like in the movie, they took away the squid, and they made that weird thing happen at the end. None of that. It's the Watchmen book is the Bible, and this is just following on from it. It's amazing, absolutely brilliant.
I'm although it's Mark Miller, obviously, we were talking about before. Although I'm on more the negative side for him, I still will read. I mean, there are some books I've read of his, I've seen, and I'm just like, that's just too much, too far, too obviously, poking a nerve deliberately. But Jupiter's Legacy is coming out on Netflix soon, which is really cool. It's a book I missed, even though I dig Frank Quitely's work. But it's something I'm kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Yeah,
and it'll probably force me to go back to the books then as well and check out what I missed.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I might have done 5 issues of it, and I liked it, but like, I find it hard to keep up with long running series. Just time. That's my problem. Is So what I tend to do is I just dip in and out of things, and just do my best there. But yeah, some good stuff coming up, I think.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to see actually? Something you've read that you would like to see actually made available?
That hasn't been made. Oh boy, that's a good question.
I say that because I've got Fables above me here, and I've got East of West and things like that.
Well, there was a couple of series that was kind of trying to be Fables, wasn't there? There was that Once Upon a Time, and what was the other one? There was a couple, right?
Yeah.
But I reckon. Let's see. I'll tell you what. They should make something out of a Paul Pope book.
Yeah.
I mean, like Heavy Liquid. One of those books, like just. You could make a real weird sci-fi noir thing out of that.
I just randomly bought Batman 100.
Yeah.
Years ago, I've got it. I think it's here somewhere. And it was the cover him hunched over that drain that smokestack thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is this? And I flicked through and I was like, I'm buying that.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
So cool.
I reckon that's what they should do. It'd be nice to see them try something a bit off the beaten path. Like I'd like to see David Lynch do a version of like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron by Dan Clowes. Like that would be, it'd be really weird. Or even something like Commandy, like Kirby's Commandy.
Yeah.
But then I suppose that's Planet of the Apes, isn't it? So
yeah.
Yeah, something weird. I'd like to see some like really like screwy stuff like Dan Clowes brought to the screen, but I doubt he'd go for that. I don't know.
I'd like to see them do something like Chew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chew is fantastic.
Procedural, like a TV show.
Would be the line for some people, like the review. When people go like they did with WandaVision. I haven't watched it, but I don't mind spoilers, so I read into it. Like people say it's like, oh, but it was it was episode 3 or episode 4. With Chew, it'll be the bit where he has to eat the dog. Like that's where I turned off, man. He ate the dead dog, and that was just, Mark saying Kirby and Commandy. Kirby was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, could you imagine all those like animals? But yeah, John. I met John Layman last year in Malta. And he's a terrific fella. He's really funny. He gave me this.
We're getting to see cool props here. Nobody does this.
He gave me that.
Nice.
It's a weird little chicken thing. So there you go. Yeah, John Layman. I drew him a Ahsoka Tano, and he gave me that.
That's amazing. I had like one of the new hardbacks come to me the other day. That's what made me remember. But
he was good.
So we normally do a few fun questions to end up. Adam, have you got any?
Yeah. First off, of course, you got to tell us about Blues Harvest because you mentioned the music. How did Blues Harvest become?
Well, basically, there's a show. There's a convention that happens here in Burnley, just down the road, every year, and it's been going on. It would be about year 12 by now, maybe year 13. So it was a really long-standing show called Star Wars Fan Fun Day, and it was just pure Star Wars. It was like Star Wars Celebration, but at Burnley Football Club of all places.
Okay.
And and by a local lad as well. He's from Blackburn, I think, called Neil, and like they're proper broad Lancashire like blokes, and they just love Star Wars, and they set up this show, and they're all like in with all the agents of all the Star Wars of all the stars. So like I remember, like I think it must have been the second show that we went to, and someone said, "You should go to the Star Wars show. You're into Star Wars, aren't you?" And I'm like, yeah. Went to the show. David Prowse right there. You know what I mean? Like all these people like from Star Wars sitting right there. And we just went up and chatted with him and made friends with him. I became friends with David Prowse. Like and Jeremy Bulloch just hanging out, just literally hanging out, and so like after a few years of going to that show, Neil said to us, "Hey, listen, here's the other thing. Before each show, he would do like a VIP dinner, and so like he'd invite us all to do like a fundraising VIP dinner. So all these Star Wars guys would be having dinner with us all around tables, like a big raffle and all. It was amazing, and so like we used to go to that every year, do the raffle, sit and chat with everyone, have dinner with bloomin' Boba Fett, and then Neil said, "Why don't you do some entertainment for us?" To me and my brother-in-law Andy, who's a drummer, and I was like, "Well, like, what do you want? What do you mean? Like, do what?" And he goes, "I don't know, put something together." So like, me and Andy were like, "What could we do?" And like, what would be entertaining? So I just went, "Well, why don't we just do like, let's just these are all dudes that grew up in like the 40s and 50s, so they're aware of like the stuff that went on in the 60s and 70s. So let's do loads of classic like blues rock stuff like Cream and stuff." So we started rehearsing, and the first thing that we rehearsed was what's it called? Flip it out. I only know it as the song that we changed it into. Crossroads by Cream, right? So we started learning Crossroads, and I said, "Why don't we change the Crossroads to Death Star?" So it would be like, "I went down to the Death Star," like that. And so then we got the idea of doing all this rhythm and blues stuff and changing the names of all the songs and changing the words. So like Hard to Handle became a song about Lando Calrissian. Like Death Star, we do like Superstition by Stevie Wonder, but we've changed it to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and like we just basically changed all these words, all the names of songs to fit Star Wars things, so that we could play it to Star Wars actors. And so like so the first year, like we went up as a 4-piece and we started playing all this quite loud rhythm and blues, and like David Prowse was like, "Whoa," like this, and Jeremy Bulloch was like, "Yeah," and what's his name? Oh, I forgot his name now. The guy that plays General Veers. What's got his name? He was Donovan in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, I'll find out. I've got the internet in front of me.
Yeah,
I know.
him. I always forget his name. He was Maester Pycelle in Game of Thrones.
Julian Glover.
Julian Glover,
Yeah.
that's it. Who I discovered is the brother of Robert Wyatt, great singer-songwriter. Anyway, so he was like, "Sorry guys, I'm out of here," and so like it was too loud. But so basically, it became a tradition that we would play at the Star Wars Fan Fun Day. And so we made the band specifically to play to Star Wars people, and so we did that for a couple of years, and we wanted to find a name, so we made a list of pun names. So one was Boba Fett Shop Boys, one was Chewie Lewis in the News.
Oh God!
There was ABBA or Jabba, but written like ABBA.
Yeah.
And there were a few, and in the end, I just said, "What about Blues Harvest?" Because that's kind of a little bit esoteric,
Yeah.
So only the people that know what Blue Harvest is will get it, And in a way, it's bitten us on the bum a little bit because it makes us sound like a blues band to people who don't know what the joke is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we're really only there for people who get the joke. So. So then it just started to take off, because then, like, people the word got out to people outside of the Fan Fun Day that there was this band that played Star Wars rock, and so the next thing we knew, this guy called Martin Keeler contacted us and said, "Listen, we're going to do a thing called Cantina." For the opener of the Star Wars Celebration in London in 2016, would you like to be involved? And we said yes. So then there was us. There was a band called Darth Elvis and the Imperials, and then the headliner was Ash, because Ash are mega Star Wars fans, and that was one of the best gigs you've ever been to, and I'm saying that being part of it, and it was amazing, and it was just amazing because it kicked off the Celebration 2016, and then that was just fantastic. So that's how we got into the celebrations, and then we got called out to do Chicago Celebration in 2019, and that was amazing. Like George Lucas' son, and like the cast from Rebels were all on stage with us playing, and
Cool.
yeah, and then on top of that, doing just lots of random shows as well, not just Star Wars stuff. So that's where Blues Harvest comes from.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's been really
cool.
good fun. Yeah, it's been a weird year. Like we haven't played for a year. You know? So we basically did we did a bunch of lockdown videos. You know what I mean? Where we would each record a part of a song and do a performance of the song, and then put them all together in a video, and released a few of those. But now that we're all getting vaccinated and getting the tests and everything, it's like we can get to rehearsing again. Maybe we'll see. Or maybe come down and play for you guys sometime.
Yeah,
we did try
definitely.
to make it happen, didn't we? And then
Yeah,
COVID happened, I think.
I know. Next time it'll happen.
We've had a really talented multi I forgot what the word is now. Damn it.
Instrumentalist?
Well, no, she's she's mainly guitarist. No, multimedia. Sorry, she does music and she does a motion comic experience. A lady called Galena, in Death and Gloria. And her stuff is great. It's like metal fused with her comic book, which is based on the music that she's doing, and it's just really cool. But we'd love to have Blues Harvest as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, anytime. Yeah, especially if we get to go down to Wales. Love Wales. Yeah, so that's where we're at. We do a thing at the end of every year called the Blues Harvest Holiday Special, which is basically a big bash at the end of the year just to celebrate the year. So we generally hold that in Preston because a lot of us live in Preston. But who knows what's going to happen this year? I don't know. We're probably going to spend the year rehearsing for next year. You know what I mean? To see if we can. I don't think that I'm going to be ready for relinquishing, my time with the baby at the moment. So we're just gonna aim for next year, I reckon. So if you guys, do the show, let's work something out.
Cool.
My people will talk to your people.
And by my people, you mean you, and by us people, you mean us.
Live on a stream.
Yeah. The other question I always pose people is a versus question. So it's 2000 AD. It's Strontium Dog, Johnny Alpha versus Dredd. Who would win?
Oh wow. I'm really torn by that one.
Like putting down their skills down, on a piece of paper. They're different but very the same. They're very similar in some ways.
Yeah. But
they're both hard asses as well. So.
Yeah, totally, and like they both have that quality where
Mark says JD.
Where basically like they both show that they have a heart, but they are not in any way encumbered by it.
Oh yeah.
So like they're willing to accept that there are things that are right and wrong, and in terms of not just the law or not just retribution, but just like in terms of the heart and in terms of that sort of thing. But it doesn't matter. You're going down, whatever happens.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what. I am going to say this though. I'm going to side with Johnny, because Dredd has his conviction, his unwavering conviction. So does Johnny, but Johnny also has a personal. He's also driven by a certain personal pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And So like where Dredd would not flinch. Maybe that's Johnny's weakness, but I don't think it is, though. I don't think it's his weakness. I think he's driven by both his sense of justice and this inner pain that he has. And he has powers.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
You know, so I'm going to
Dredd hides behind a wall and just...
Yeah.
The way I always reason those out, the last week's one was Steph and Sarah's fought cats. I asked them who would win in a fight. That was pretty brutal.
Okay.
But with some things like that, it's whoever's faced off. I mean, like Spider-Man versus Batman, for example. Batman would probably beat Spider-Man because Spider-Man will learn from the loss. Batman wouldn't. But you know, Superman versus Spider-Man, Superman would probably lose because it's the way things should be. But yeah, I think. I mean, if I had to weigh them up, I'd probably dig Dredd over Johnny. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Mark disagrees, but
I'm only. I tell you what, I'm only saying that because I got to draw Johnny last year. But
that's where I was thinking. It comes down to with all of those verses, it's who's drawing it and which one are writing it and which one's their favourite.
Yeah.
I know.
I remember when the 50 I was loaned by Pete actually his singles for 52, the big Maxi series.
Yeah.
And because obviously they're trying to fill out all these 52 issues, they had when like Halloween or Comic Con would come around, the letters at the back and little information at the back were about different things. And one of them, Comic Con, had come along, and they were asking the writers and the artists their favorite memories of Comic Con. I remember there was one, and it was just basically two guys who were clearly not the right shape for their favorite characters. One was they were dressed as Hulk and Thor, and they had argued verbally about who would win in a fight. You know, obviously the guy dressed as Thor said Thor, Hulk. And apparently they had to be torn apart by a bunch of securities because it just got to fist fight. And apparently as they were being dragged away, they were just screaming across the hall, Mark says if Esquerra was drawing Johnny Alpha, then Johnny would win.
Oh, well, yeah. But then he also drew Dredd.
Yeah.
Hey, I tell you, speaking of Esquerra, I view myself as a bit of a chancer. As I've told you, I came in late. I've no right to be here. You know what I mean? Like, there's people way better than me, and that's fine. But I've got my little niche in this world, and so one day, one convention, I did, and I was invited to do a panel with Andy Diggle, who's a mate of mine, so that's okay. Don Wagner and Carlos Esquerra and me. So like there's these like full on 2000 AD two mega legends. Andy Diggle's no slouch, you know what I mean? And then this idiot at the end of the table, and I was at the end as well. So like whenever they asked a question, it would be like start at Andy Diggle, move on to John Wagner, on to Carlos Esquerra, and then this guy. And all I'd ever done is 2 trades worth of comics. That was it, you know. And so like, oh, and what is some of the highlights of your career and blah 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 blah. And then, you know, Carlos would be like, well, you know, when I first invented George Dredd, you know, and then get to me, and I was like, well, I mean, I drew a really good helicopter once, you know. I felt like such a phony, but lovely guys though. Yeah.
We were in talks with Carlos before he passed, actually in 2018, just to see if he would come along. He wanted John to come along with him, and so obviously John was busy, so.
John's a character. You've had John before, right?
No, we've met John at different places. He is a character.
Yeah, he's great. He's brilliant.
Really cool guy.
The biggest character we've had at the show is Bisley.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Weirdly though, the best moment was we had some interesting moments post show, but we were sitting in. He was taking a break. He was having a desperado in the cafe. In the Brangwyn Hall.
Of blood.
Yes, yeah, basically. But he and I were talking about the band Typo Negative and how why do people like gloomy bands? blood. Yeah,
Perfect.
and yeah, that was actually a pretty cool moment. Actually, he's when you when you sit down and it's just nice and quiet. He's normal.
He's a great guy. I've met him. In fact, we did a gig with him, which was odd. And because like he plays
with his band Dumetrodon.
I don't know if it was. I don't think it was them. I think that he rustled up a band with. It was Fraser Irving, and
All right.
him and Fraser is bananas as well. And so like him and no, it might not have been actually because Fraser did a thing later on that evening. Anyway, Bisley's band, whatever it was, doing their like that, and then these guys playing, like Footloose. Like we were playing Footloose and Ghostbusters and stuff like that, and it felt a bit like a little bit of a not quite gelling there, but
eclectic.
So, yeah, eclectic. So I think he probably thought, "What a bunch of pansies these guys are," but he wasn't wrong.
That's really cool.
But we're aware of how much of your time we've taken now. We're so grateful that you came on and had a chat with us.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. It was nice. It was really nice to talk to people I don't speak to very often.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's all right.
Vic's not watching. It's fine.
And so
Mark likes your art as well.
Are you
you.
lined up for any conventions this year, or are you waiting it out?
I mean, Thought Bubble. I've been accepted for Thought Bubble.
That's all you need, really.
Yeah. Like supposedly. Oh no. Supposedly might do something for the lakes. But nothing other than that. I'm not sort of pushing for anything. If people invite me, I'll certainly get involved in some of these things. But that's it really. That's it. I'm doing a San Diego exclusive cover for Star Wars Adventures. So I don't know if we're going to do a panel or anything. So I might be involved in that, but I'm definitely doing some work for it. So that's nice. Yeah, but that's it. Just you guys.
And then, where would you like us to point people? So where Blues Harvest and your work?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, at the moment, I would say keep an eye open for the. See, here's the thing. Like the Star Wars Adventures books don't come out in the UK because of a licensing thing. They only come out in the States and in most of Europe, but not in the UK. Whereas, so if you want to see my work, my Star Wars work, you have to order it specifically from Forbidden Planet, or like some shops, if you speak to them, will get like the little collections in, because they do these little mini collections.
Yes, I've seen them.
So yeah, like these kind of things, like these little ones. But the books themselves, you've got to order specifically from Forbidden Planet. So if you want to see like my Star Wars work, go to Forbidden Planet. I mean, if you follow me, on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, I always put up, notices about where you can find the books. There will be one, and I'm hoping that it's going to come out on Free Comic Book Day. It's the IDW Free Comic Book Day Star Wars book, and I'm doing it. So I'm assuming that we'll get it in this country because it's a Free Comic Book Day one.
Yep.
So I'm doing the Free Comic Book Day story for Star Wars Adventures.
That'll be coming out in August now. We've heard the Free Comic Book Days be moved to August, isn't it? So
right, is that right? I didn't.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the 1st of May, but that's why we kind of normally do our show.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, you got more time.
Yeah, I'm working on it right now. So so seek out my Star Wars work. It's good all ages stuff for if you've got younger ones. And then I've got a book coming out. It's going to be announced soon, and it's with a very well-known writer, and it's gonna be it's a joint thing. It's a Comixology Dark Horse thing that's coming out later on in the year. It's a 5-part series, and it's a cracker. It's a real cracker, and it's completely off the beaten path from Star Wars and stuff like that. So look out for an announcement from all the usual places.
And
But yeah,
you're at Nick Brokenshire on.
oh yeah, at Nick Brokenshire on everything. And then, like, if you want to just look at some of my artwork, if you go to nickbrokenshire.co.uk, just loads of random stuff on there. Feel free to lurk around there and have a look there. And the Blues Harvest stuff, bluesharvest.co.uk, I believe. You can go on there, and there's loads of, like, our drummer's a bit of a video whiz guy, so like he's put together all these little compilation videos of things, and we've actually got kind of a scratchily recorded live album on Spotify. So if you go on Spotify and look for Blues Harvest, you'll hear a live set there, and it's very live. So
almost bootleggy sounding.
Yeah. Yeah, Blues Harvest dot whatever.
There we go.
I'm sure they'll do the one. We're just going to address the chat. And Mark, you said about staying online afterwards. We normally wrap up after this and we stay online, but we come off of the air for a bit. So, what do you mean by that, Mark? Also, yes, Dark Horse is still going actually pretty well, even though it's lost the Alien and Predator stuff, which is strange. Seeing Marvel have it.
They're evolving as well. Like, they're having to branch out into other things. So
I love what they are doing. I mean, the stuff that they're evolving with. I mean, like, apparently it was an apology. You don't know it's an apology. Like Baltimore and stuff like that. Lady Baltimore evolving and stuff. I mean, I know Hellboy's gone, but the stuff that they're still doing, is just nuts.
Yeah, there's plenty of juice in the tank. It's all.
I love the fact that they kind of like they've not cornered the market, but they're horror and more macabre, more mature, and kind of eldritch, space horror stuff is just kind of like the staple, and they just nail it.
Yeah, for sure. Although in the 90s, they had quite a nice. I'm so old. They had a nice cross section and stuff. They used to do. I think they released Concrete. Did you ever read that?
Yeah.
And there were a few like off kilter things that they did as well as the horror stuff.
Oh my god! That's just my chair the way. Yeah, I've got one of my favorite Dark Horse books. I've got Hellboy and stuff.
Sure.
Is
oh man,
Shaolin Cowboy.
Yeah,
spectacular. Jeff Darrow is nuts.
Bananas. Yeah,
it's just wall-to-wall zombies.
Yes.
And chainsaw noises running across the page. It's just fantastic.
Oh, it's just crackers. Was Rusty the Robot and the Big Guy, was that on Dark Horse? Did you ever
the back of my head is weird. It is weird. My mum used to use the cliff to keep me on the table. Rusty the Robot, did you say?
Yeah, have you seen that?
No.
Oh,
I don't. It sounds familiar, but
right, seek it out. It's called. It's either Rusty the Robot and the Big Guy. I think it's the Big Guy and Rusty the Robot. It's this oversized book that Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow did.
Yeah.
Frank Miller? Yeah, because Frank Miller and he did a thing called Hard Boiled. Yeah. And then after that, they followed it up with Rusty the Robot and the Big Guy, or whichever way.
You recognize it. Our local comic shop guy, Simon, swears by Hard Boiled because it's one of those ones you shoot through and you flick through and you just see all the little stuff Jeff has just peppered in, sprinkled in it.
Yeah, you need to see Big Guy and Rusty the Robot.
I recognize it. I've Googled it before, actually, I think.
It's so detailed that a book this big, you're still like this with it.
Yeah.
It's
That's the crazy thing about Shaolin Cowboy is it's like a whole, as you probably know, it's like a whole splash page of zombies, but then you'll see like tattoos and things like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah, he's sick. He's sick in the head, that man.
Right.
Yeah. In a good way, of course.
In a good way. The best way.
But so that was great. It was a really nice chat, and we'll be back on Wednesday when me and Simon will be painting and building and whatnot. And then Friday we'll be on for the group game. Oh, and Sam on Thursday with Magic the Gathering. But thank you very much for all your time, and we will speak to you again.
Thanks, guys. Thank you to everyone who was hanging out. I couldn't see you, but I could feel you. I could sense you.
You smell him.
Yeah.
That could be the baby.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.